I know you grew up in Minnesota.
No, I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was born there.
Okay, so you didn't grow up in Minnesota.
I did not grow up there. I grew up actually in the state of Washington, but you can go back to Minnesota if you like.
Okay, so your family was from Minnesota.
Well, yeah, basically, I think pretty much. My grandparents lived in a little town called Pelican Rapids. I had relatives, let's see, up in Fargo, North Dakota, which is just across the border, of course. And my dad got into the merchandising business before he went off to fight in World War II, and moved my mother and I up to, actually he moved up to Hibbing, and that's where he had his job. That's where I was born, Hibbing, Minnesota. Yeah, but then 2 weeks later he went off to fight in the war, and my grandfather came up and got us and took us down to Pelican Rapids, and that's where we lived for the 2.5 years, I think, that he was gone. When he returned, we moved to Watertown, South Dakota shortly thereafter for a couple of years. Then the business that he was in moved him to Yakima Valley in Washington State, and that's where we spent the next 10 or 11 years, except for 4th and 5th grade, was Tacoma, but they were moving him from store to store as he made his way up the ladder.
What branch of the service was he in?
He was in Army.
Okay, infantry?
Yes, he was reconnaissance, looking for enemy positions, and at some point was captured, and he ended up spending nearly 6 months in German prison camps.
You don't know me, but for the last 20 years, every Tuesday I go to a POW support group, and it ended, the last guy died from World War II, died last week.
Oh my gosh.
So, it's coincidence, you know how that happens. But, you want to be in a German POW camp, not the Japanese. So the Japanese is terrible.
Yeah.
Was he affected by the war?
I believe that he was. He wouldn't speak of it at all. He wouldn't talk of it casually for the longest time, and it wasn't until close to the end of his life that he started to open up about it. When apparently he was captured, and it was the last 6 months of the war. So when the Russians were coming, all the Germans ran, and he was able to then, leave the prison camp that he was in and find his way back to friendly lines, but it affected him. I don't know how to describe it. I know that psychologically there came a point when we started talking a little bit about it, and he really held he had a lot of guilt feelings, for pulling the trigger, but he was a platoon leader. And he told me a story of his guys getting picked off by a sniper, and he said, I had to figure out where he was and how to stop him, and he said, I waited and finally was able to stop the sniper, but my dad just somehow harbored those feelings of having to take a human life, so.
Of course, it's tough.
Yeah.
Okay, so you live out west.
Yes,
okay.
Early on.
So I don't want to keep you forever, but when do you realize you could sing?
I never knew it. Honestly, it just was something that I did. My parents would get a tape recorder each year before Christmas, 6-8 weeks, and we would record messages to them. We would sing songs. Then they would take the tape back to whoever they rented it from, and they would turn it into these little yellow records that we would send to my grandparents back in Pelican Rapids. And I remember one of them had me at 8 years old singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Fun stuff.
And I remember my mother telling me one time, she said, I just thought it was normal that all little 8-year-old boys could sing, so I never say anything about it. There was no, oh my gosh, look what this kid can do or anything, So I didn't know really that I could sing. I just knew that I sang along with stuff, But there came a point, of course, after my parents encouraged me to be musical, and that was because they were both musical, and that's how they met. She was a very accomplished pianist, and he was a saxophone player, and they were in a big band together right out of high school called the Dick Halverson Big Band, and they met, fell in love, and they probably would have chosen to be musicians the rest of their lives as a career if it had been an easier proposition, but they kind of wanted to live a more normal life, and he wanted to have a more normal job, and they wanted to build a family and all that. So ultimately 5 kids, and I don't remember how many grandkids she had, but both my parents are gone now many years, but yeah, they said, Gary, you're going to take piano lessons. I was the firstborn. And,
so you can play piano pretty well, right?
Well, I can play fairly well. That's all I'm going to say. I was too much like a typical kid when I was a kid. I wanted to go out and chase garter snakes. I didn't want to sit and practice piano and learn my 3 B's and all that kind of stuff,
So who are you, before we get to you start doing music, you go to San Diego, go to school, because if you're out west, you want to go to San Diego. Is that why you went there? You want to be the son?
No, my dad he was still working for the Allied Merchandising Corporation. They had Bon Marché, C.C. Anderson, I think another store or two whose names I don't remember. But there was an independent department store in Pacific Beach, which is the San Diego area. And he somehow learned of the position that was open, applied for it. He got it, so he moved the entire family out to the San Diego area.
Oh, so you all moved there, okay.
All of us moved there, and somehow none of my sisters, both of my sisters, I should say, did not marry somebody in the service, because, as you know, San Diego is a big military town. So all of my family remains in the San Diego area, mostly in the North County. And I'm the only one that moved away and got out of California and went to Florida. But we were a family unit there for many, many years, and they still love it there. I don't know why. Lots of problems in Southern California, but
so you go to school, and is school not for you, or just you're young? Is that...
Well, I don't know. It's hard. In retrospect, it's difficult for me to really know. My parents wanted me to grow up and do better than they did. I think all parents are that way. They want their kids to succeed beyond. And they wanted me to go into medicine, and they were pushing dentistry, and I had no interest in being a dentist. But I tried, I wanted to please them, so I went to San Diego City College for 2 years and took all the requisite courses, and found myself, in courses like biology, which, I don't dislike biology, but it wasn't something that was really turning me on. So I wasn't really studying that hard. Right in the middle of that course, they put in a course in astronomy for 6 weeks, which I got A+ all the way through. That was the only thing that saved me from failing the biology class. But while I was doing that, I was playing in bands. And that was more exciting to me. That was more interesting to me. My parents, both being musical, my mother plays every day of her life. And we had a piano.
So, I didn't mean to stop you. I'm just saying, so is it 1964, 1965? What year is it?
Well, we're talking about actually school was 1961 and 2.
Okay.
City College. And they wanted me to go on to State College, but there just came a point where I wanted to be an adult and have my own life and, do it the way I wanted to do it. Not saying it was right or wrong, but I went to work at a place called Foreign Auto Supply, which in 1963, how many foreign cars did we have in America, But they had basic engine parts for French cars, German cars, English cars, that kind of thing. And I kind of worked my way up through the ranks for 2 years. In fact, it started out just as the 2 owners, the secretary, and 2 drivers. And by the time I left, it was a larger organization with a machine shop and all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to play and sing. I wanted to be on the stage and have fun and all that. So I continued with it, and I remember the day that I walked in, and I got Ed and John, the 2 owners of the business, and I said, guys, I have to tell you that I'm going to give you 2 weeks notice because I want to go and try and make this music thing work. And they said, we understand. If you ever want your job back, come back. It's right here. waiting for you, you know. And I thought, well, that's good, that's nice, you know. But still, it was not really my cup of tea. I always liked cars, particularly through the 50s, you know, but that was just as looking at the car, you know, driving the car, customizing the car, that kind of thing. But I never wanted to be a mechanic as such or any of that stuff. But anyway, that's when I really started working nightly. For a while there, 2 years at Foreign Auto Supply, I worked in a club at night, and then I'd go home and sleep for 4 hours, and then I'd go to work at 9 in the morning or 8 or whatever it was, and work till 5, and then go back and get an hour's nap and go back to. But it was the music thing and the club thing and that exciting, you know, playing the music and being with the people that really excited me anyway. So.
Back then was a lot of beach music?
Well, there was beach music, and we would go up to Huntington Beach. I think there was what was the ballroom called? I can't recall. You caught me off guard there. Something. It might have been just called the Surf Ballroom, and you know the groups that were making the surf music just prior to the Beach Boys. You know. Who would they be? Not coming to mind right now, but they would have these big dance parties, you know, in the surf ballroom, and you know, I found it exciting. You know, we would have a good time, but surf music wasn't really what I was into as we were playing music in the clubs around town. Mostly it was the Beatles, the Stones, the R&B of the day, the dance music of the day. It included a little bit of that surf stuff, but not really. But what we were doing nightly, and there came a point when I said, I got to get out of these nightclubs. I don't think I want to do this all of my life, because though it was fun for a while as a kid, it was exciting, and you know, there you are sort of chasing the chicks and, you know, playing the guitars and, you know, being cool and all that kind of stuff. But there came a point where I said, you know, I don't know that this is going to be the greatest thing in the world if I'm going to have to be in these nightclubs forever. And a couple of things really convinced me of that, and one of them was going out on the road without a hit record. And we'd have to stay in a motel someplace in Phoenix, you know, or wherever it was, and you know, you'd be away from home and away from your environment, and then you'd have to go, and it became a drag on, you know, the personality, the desires, and all that. And I said, I got to figure out a way to get out of these nightclubs. I want to get out there. I want to work with the Beach Boys. I want to work with those groups that are making the records, and you know. So I kept wondering, how can we do this? How can we do this? I've got to go to the record companies. I've got to find somebody that believes in me. And we had made a couple of records. Not really. One was called Runaway. In fact, you can hear it. You can find it on YouTube now. It was the bass player who sang the lead part, and I just sang the background part. And the flip side, what was it called? Can't Get Through to You or something, on Karate Records or something. But you know, we were still trying. We were trying it, and I thought, there is a way to do this. I just am not sure how. So when I put the Union Gap together, it was just a little group that was talented. All the guys could play, and they could all sing. They could all, Carrie Chater, who right now is in ICU in Nashville because of COVID related, and Gary Witham, his partner, songwriting partner. Both, Gary played sax and keyboards. He went on to be a music teacher, got his degree in music, and had a music course for 200 kids for a number of years. But Kerry could play bass, he could play keyboards, and they wrote a lot of songs, and I played guitar, and I could play keyboard and all that, and so we had a talented band, and we were able to play the Beatles, we were able to play the Stones, we were able to play with 2 saxophones, the R&B stuff that all the people wanted to dance to. And I went, you know, this group has talent, and I think that we could make it if we were just able to find the right person. But we're going to need something that's going to help us along the way. And if you remember what we were all wearing back in those days, platform shoes, bell bottoms, hip huggers, you know, fringes, leathers, tie-dyes, all this stuff. And went, we've got to look different. We have to be different somehow than because our business is one of the most competitive, I think, because everybody wants to be king of the hill. And you can't blame them, because when you get to be king of the hill, you can make millions and millions and millions of dollars. It's like those few people that get to be at the top of the NFL or the AFL or
So you're working with the band. How do you get your big break? I know, is it Bob Fuller? What's his name? Who's that guy?
Jerry Fuller.
Jerry.
Yeah. Well, it took a ways to get there, actually, because it occurred to me that, like I was saying, we needed to have a difference about us. I knew that we needed to make a great record and to have a great team, a machine behind us that was going to make it happen. This was just common knowledge to me. But I also felt that we needed to have a difference about us, the 5 guys that were going to be this new group. And I thought, well, I got to get an agent, and I've got to have the guy put us out on the road so we can experience some of this stuff. And so I found a guy that was up in the Los Angeles area, and he was an old trombone player from the big band era. So he said, well, I'm one of the old guys, so I'm going to send my young guy down to see you guys. And we auditioned for him. I remember his name, Bob Zevers. Hey, Bob. Hope you're still alive and well. Bob came down and he saw us work in this little club that was just a total dump. I won't say the name of the club because I just said total dump. But a club that we had worked in, where we made our living on a weekly basis kind of thing. And the agent said, well, you guys are okay. I'll see if I can get you a job. So he sent us to Van Nuys. Then he sent us to Seattle. And this was January, February. From Seattle, we went to Portland, and we worked in it was called the Long Branch, or the Longhorn, one of the 2, Long Branch. And it was a very long club, and on one end of it, it was a topless thing, and on the other end of it was the dance thing, So fortunately, we were on the other end at the dance thing, and we went from there down to Vallejo, California, and we worked in another topless club, a little stage on each side. Now, when we were at the Quad Room in San Diego, we had go-go girls, but it was all up and up, They were beautiful, they were dressed, these clubs were really sketchy. And it's very difficult for, a 23, 24-year-old man to be blindered with nearly naked women dancing next to him, So I just remember it as an experience. Then I took the guys. It was while we were in Seattle working at some club that I got the idea. I said, we have to look different, guys, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to wear Union soldier outfits. And they just looked at me like, you're mad. You're gone. What is wrong? I said, no, this is good. We can all be the same but be different. We can have sergeants and corporals and privates and generals. We can have different hats. But we are the same. It's kind of like that model car. You've got all these different colors, different wheels, different this, different that. And they just laughed for days. They thought it was the funniest thing. But after Vallejo, I took them to Los Angeles to the, what's it called? It's a warehouse right in I can't, for some reason I can't remember the name of it. That's just what happens to me. It just goes blank for a moment. Something costume. Anyway, I wanted to buy the outfits for the guys, and they cost so much money. We didn't have enough money between us to buy one outfit. So I said, let me rent one. And they said, okay. Rented one. Took the guys and went to Tijuana. Because we lived in San Diego, it's an hour drive or whatever, and I found a great little tailor. I just showed him the jacket. He went, okay, measured us all up. It took him, I remember, a few weeks, and he made these coats, and they were great. They were just great. So I had hats made. We were able then to just get nice slacks and put gold braid, and all that kind of stuff. And now we had a look, and I took the guys then to a little ghost town out east of San Diego. And they were like a little tiny mini Knott's Berry Farm. If you've ever been there, they have these faux gunfights, you know, and you know, they shoot and people fall off the roofs and all this, and it's fun to watch. It's an entertaining thing. Well, we took pictures with the saloon gals in the saloon, with the sheriff in the jail, jumped over the tombstones, and we got all kinds of photos, which I put into a portfolio along with a lot of song lyrics that I had written, and a demo of me in the last group I was in, as a matter of fact. I think I was singing My Prayer by the Plouters and something else, I forget what. But that's when I actually had something to show somebody. So we started going to Los Angeles every day. Drive back, go to work in the nightclub, next morning get up, drive to Los Angeles, and go to all the record companies. And there came a point when I finally stopped at CBS and walked inside, and I asked the lady, is there anybody here that might want to hear a new group? And she looked at me and she said, just a minute. And she pulled the phones and she said something, and she said, go down that hallway right there you see, go to the second door on the right, and there's a guy by the name of Jerry Fuller. I said, thank you. So I had told the guys to stop the car outside. Well, it was Hollywood Boulevard. You can't park, you know, unless there's a parking space. It never is. So I said, just go around until, you know, if a cop comes or whatever. And so I went, and Jerry was standing in his office, pounding a nail in the wall to hang up a gold record. And that was impressive to me because I'd never seen a gold record.
Do you remember the gold record or not?
Sure I do. It was Travelin' Man by Ricky Nelson.
Ooh, that's a great
and
song.
Jerry had written that song, and he said, I actually wrote this for Sam Cooke. But he said Sam didn't want it, and Ricky's people were walking by, and they heard it, and they went, Sam doesn't want it, can we have it? And Ricky's version sold 4 million copies, so CBS, rather Columbia Records, hired Jerry to be a producer, write songs, find talent, make records. And I showed him my portfolio, of course, and he said, where can I see this group? So I told him where we were, and he said, I'm coming down on Saturday night. He actually came down on Friday night, and at midnight stood at the front of the stage looking up at me, and I almost didn't recognize him because I was simply cruising through the night trying to save my voice for the next night kind of thing, you know. And he said, let's go make a record. So I thought, what, maybe, you know. So we sat in a booth outside. It was kind of hysterical to watch us walk into the bowling alley where the club was in the beginning with our Union Soldier outfits on, but it was fun. And the people at first kind of capped on it and said, here comes Paul Revere of the Raiders again. But I would just say, get your history right, you know. And pretty soon, after a week or two of us standing on that stage, it looked great. And we had become a pretty good band, so people started to kind of turn on to the whole idea, you know, and at that point, we had a waiting line to get into the club every night from about 9:30 until 12:30.
So when did you start cutting some records?
We started cutting records. It was August of 1967 when we actually went in with Jerry, who said, I forget exactly when it was. It had to be around May, maybe April or May, that we sat in the booth and talked. He said, I'm going to go back and get all the contracts together. I'll come back and we'll sign right here. And we did. We signed in the bowling alley. And he said, I've got the song, I've got the arranger, I'll set the date and I'll let you know. So it was August 17 of 1967, and we went into Columbia Record Studios and recorded 3 songs, and Woman, Woman, Have You Got Cheating on Your Mind was one of those.
Yeah, that's special. That's so, I mean, did you think it was going to be a hit? Because it's a good song, doesn't make it a hit.
That's true, and Jerry would always say to me, song first, all else next, meaning singer, arrangement, performance, everything. He said, I believe this is a hit song. If you remember, and you certainly probably do, in those days they put out a record with an A and a B side. and they learned at some point that an A and B side in the hands of a disc jockey could be difficult, because some disc jockeys wanted to play the A side, some wanted to play the B side, so they'd kind of work against each other in markets. So Jerry said to me, I remember one time, we're getting play on the B side, which is "Don't Make Promises You Can't Keep," a Tim Hardin song. But he says we're also getting play on "Woman, Woman," and he said they just might, diffuse each other. I don't remember what words he used, but
cancel each other.
Cancel, that's a better word, yeah. And he said we might have to go in and try again. Well, turns out that I had gone after the record company to put a picture of us on the sleeve of the record. In those days, it was just a brown, red, black, white sleeve, if you recall.
You had to be Elvis to have one of those.
Yeah. And I said, you got to put a picture of us on this record. Nope, we don't do that. We only do that for established groups. And I said, I think it might be helpful to the success of the record. No. Well, I argued, and finally they got tired of me arguing with them, and they said, okay, we'll do it. And we went and took a picture with one of their photographers in a school, I think it was in Van Nuys actually, that had been destroyed by the wrecking ball. So we were in the auditorium. You couldn't tell what it was, but the stage allowed us to stand, high and low. And they did it in sepia tone, the old brown tone, and it was just a fantastic picture. It looked really authentic, and there was a disc jockey program director in Columbus, Ohio, that got that record and that sleeve in his hand one day, and he went, "This is one great picture. I wonder what this record sounds like." So he auditioned it, went, "This is a hit. This is a pick to click." He put it on the station, it went to #1. Columbia Records has a regional office in Cleveland, which is a hop, skip, away. So it went to #1, I think it was WCOL, Columbus, Ohio, and Cleveland called me and said, "Hey, you have a hit record in Columbus. We're going to bring you back here, put you to work in a little nightclub in the basement of the Sheraton Hotel. In the daytime, we're going to go out and we're going to shake hands and see if we can't make this a hit." That's what we did, and that's what happened.
And that was a great hit.
It was.
You know how hard it is to have your first record to be a smash? It's unheard of.
Well, they say that we had 5 in a row, that all went to the top of the charts, and they always say things like, "Well, nobody did that, not even Elvis." He had a lot of records out before his big successes and all that, but we were fortunate. "Woman, Woman" was special. Apparently, the fans thought the record was special, that my voice was special. They went out and.
So it hits #2, which is basically #1. That must make you crazy not hitting #1. But do you start appearing on TV?
Well, we did start appearing on TV on a couple of the local programs in LA, and I forget what they were called, but and then there came a point when we started getting bookings, and then along came William Morris, and they said, sign up with us, and by the way, if we get you some, if we get you some national television, we want an extra percentage and all that kind of stuff. And of course, we were green around the gills and did whatever we could to keep it rolling. Yes, we ended up doing all of the variety programs from, from Jonathan Winters to Red Skelton to, Glenn Campbell, Smothers Brothers, all that stuff,
Tell me a couple stories about maybe Jonathan Winters, because he's nutty.
Jonathan was the most fun of all of them, for absolute certain. As we all know, Robin Williams was, sort of his... Jonathan was Robin's mentor in a strange way, but Jonathan, I think that he had been committed a couple of times. I'm not sure, but he to me was one of the funniest men on the face of the earth at that point. But to do those those variety programs took a lot of rehearsal. And they would bring you in for 5 days, and you would sit around a table, and they would put you in skits, and you'd have lines and things, and you'd have to rehearse and block and make sure that it was like making a movie kind of thing. And
was it hard to be on those shows because you're not an actor?
Well, no, not really. I mean, it was fun, just the challenge of it, and all that. But my phone keeps ringing from the other room. You can't hear it, can you? You don't hear it. Okay, that's good.
Sorry, I got this in my ear anyway.
Nah, that's all right. What was I saying? Oh, so we went through these couple of days, and then there came the day of dress rehearsal. And Jonathan, of course, was not aware of the Union soldier outfits to this point. So when we walked on to the set in our Union soldier outfits to do whatever we were doing, his mind just went, hello. Pretty soon he's shooting arrows, and he's ducking and then running, and and it was hysterical. The whole crew just stopped and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And they say in that business time is money, but
did you do Sullivan then or later? Ed Sullivan.
Sullivan was a little bit later.
Because he's a little tougher. He's not funny at all. Right?
Yeah, well, Sullivan was. I didn't really realize who Ed Sullivan was at the time. I mean, I knew that he had been a journalist, and he was a famous man in many ways. And certainly, I watched the Ed Sullivan Show and everything from Topo Gigio to the Beatles to whatever, And to be on that program was a bit frightening, because though they weren't going to let the band play, they didn't understand how to do live music. They got a track, and I sang live, and they said, "Don't be nervous, there's only 8 million people watching as you sing live," and that, I think, made me feel a little stiff and all that, but it was exhilarating for sure to be on that stage. I remember them saying to me, we want to make sure that Ed doesn't say the name of the group wrong, Puckett. So, and he said it quite plain, Gary Puckett, in the Union Gap. So it was an experience. It was a lot of fun. It was frightening. It was daunting. But
is that where you wore the green outfit?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I showed a girl that earlier, and she liked it.
Yeah.
Is the band at all getting upset you're getting all the attention? Because obviously you're getting all the attention.
I don't know about that. I mean, everybody had their fans. All the band members, it seems like there were people that were drawn to each of them for reasons, and I never really even thought about that. There came a point, though, when our manager said, "You are the focus of this. You are the focal point, and we should divide the money into 6 pieces instead of 5, and you should get 2 of those 6th pieces, and they should get 1." And that upset people, and I think that started the unraveling, of the whole thing. And at some point, Kerry Chater and Gary Witham, good songwriters, had been given a deal with A&M Records to write songs. They were with the publishing wing, and they decided they'd quit the group, live in Los Angeles, write songs, etc. So that's when things came apart.
In that era, you had all the beach movies and these other movies, and sometimes bands showed up on these movies. Were you ever involved or asked to be in any of these pop movies?
I was doing one called My Boyfriend's Back with Judith Light, Sandy Duncan, and I forget the third lady. And I had a small speaking part, but there was a performance in the movie, and I think I did Young Girl, and it was fun, and I studied acting with a guy by the name of Jeff Corey in Los Angeles, who was the West Coast counterpart to Lee Strasberg.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and Jeff had worked with everybody from Jack Nicholson and Marilyn Monroe to many others, and he had these classes that were very difficult to get in, but somehow because of my celebrity, he allowed me to interview, and he liked me, so he let me into his class, and through that I got hired to do a movie. Got the lead part, as a matter of fact, and wrote all the music for it. You'll never find it. It was done in the Philippine Islands by family money, and I think they ran out of money at some point and were never able to finish it. So, but it was a marvelous experience. I spent 4-5 months in the Philippine Islands writing it.
What year is this?
74 and 75.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so things are going so well for you. I mean, every song is a million seller. Are you touring constantly? I mean, what do you do when this happens? Because you got to hit when the iron's hot, right?
Well, we did 68, 69, 70, and then the group was breaking up, and we brought in other members, and things started to change then. And I think that it was 72 when I finally just kind of called it quits. I didn't call it quits. I wanted to stop for a year, and I wanted to write songs, and then I wanted to come back and start all over again.
You took a break.
Yeah.
But before you take a break, I got a question for you. So, you're nominated for Best New Singer or Newest Singer at the 68 Grammys. Tell me about going to the 69 Grammys. That must have been something else.
Actually, we didn't go. We were working.
You didn't go?
Well, I didn't even go.
Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't get the chance to experience the gathering of people for the Grammys, and we didn't win anyway, so.
But Woman's nominated too, right?
It was nominated, yeah.
With Hey Jude, I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, okay. I guess so.
So this is happening so quick. When some money comes in, do you buy something special for yourself, or how are your parents taking it?
Well, the parents were a little dismayed that I was quitting the higher education thing, but there came a point where they would come to the clubs and support, and listen to the band, and they thought that we were a good band as well, even up to the point before the Union Gap was formed. But after I got the success, they were quite proud and quite pleased, and were happy that I had pursued it, stayed with it, and conquered.
Do you buy them anything special? Here, Mom, here's a new car. Is anything like that?
Yeah. I didn't really. I wasn't quite like Elvis, and just and didn't have the funds to buy them new cars and things. But there came a point where I was sitting in my mother's kitchen, and I looked over in the corner, and this was a little house that they had bought in middle 60s, I guess, or even earlier, 63 or 4, and she was still there in 1960. Even later, and I just went, Mom, your house needs remodeling. So I moved her out and just gutted the house and remodeled the whole thing, and it was a lot of fun, and she was very proud of it, and couldn't wait to clean the house every day just because it was a brand new, beautiful house.
You're so successful. You must have gotten, when people love success,
yeah.
You must have gotten some great accolades from people. Did you get a phone call from the vice president? Did you get a letter from Elvis? I mean, did you get some one of those? Because you get those when you're on top, right?
Well, I guess you do. I wasn't that lucky. Elvis didn't call me. I did meet Elvis once. And,
tell me the Elvis story.
Well, we were going to work at the International Hotel, which is where he made his home. In fact, I remember watching them build it, 1955 or something like that, on television. And I remember seeing him there with his hard hat on and all that stuff. And when we were invited to work there, I thought, this is going to be pretty cool. Elvis was in the big room, which held 2,500 people, and we were in the small room, we being Ike and Tina Turner and Red Fox. And we alternated shows from midnight until 5 in the morning. And it was the grind. I just hated it, absolutely hated it. But walking down the hallway one day, just to go to the elevators, and here came Elvis and his entourage, but he was in the middle and they were all, around him, and I went, these guys don't look like, what do they do? There's somebody in there, they're hiding, they don't look like tourists. So I just stopped in front of them and said, excuse me, and they parted, and now I'm looking straight in his face. I'm closer to him than we are right now, He reached out and shook my hand, and I said, hi, Elvis, I'm Gary Puckett. And he said, I know. I know, man. So that was exciting, and it took my mind back to the days of me following him in the early days, of Heartbreak Hotel and I Want You, I Need You, I Love You, and the album that had all the great. I still have that album on my iPad.
It's a great album.
Yeah.
Who were some of your influences?
Well, that's hard to say. I was always influenced by somebody, whether it was Pat Boone or it was Fats Domino. There was something going on there, and but I was always drawn to the other side of the tracks. I know that in those days, the philosophy was, well, if you can take a great song that some black artist has done and give it to a white artist, you're going to sell a lot more records. And they would do that, But I loved Little Richard and Chuck Berry and all the groups that came before, the great R&B groups and the Drifters and the Platters and the Coasters but I also loved the rock and rollers like Elvis and Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran and Carl Perkins and so many others, that were. That's where I always was led to the rock part of it, in the R&B part.
Since you were so successful, did a lot of people start showing up at your shows? Did people start showing up at your show?
You mean, yeah, in Vegas, Juliet Prowse was dancing in the aisles one night, and that was incredible to see because, not only is she beautiful, she's a great dancer, and so that kind of stuff was always fun. I knew that Elvis had come to the show. In fact, he told me he was going to come, and I didn't believe him until I got the message from the maitre d' that E was there, but what a great feeling it was, and scary, but made you kind of want to go.
I think you got some Elvis in you when I see you perform a few times. So things are going very well. Is it too much at times because you're becoming so successful so quickly? Because you go from good to the best. I mean, you sold more records than the Beatles in a year.
Well, I think that had to do with single records, to be honest, and I would always tell people the Beatles were just having a bad year. I know they were going through their changes and breaking up and all that kind of stuff, but that's what the history books say, so I don't know the real truth of it. I do know that I remember being given a link to a news interview. I forget who it was, one of the news guys we all remember from, who I don't remember at the moment, from that time, and he was interviewing McCartney and Lennon, and I'm enjoying the interview, but I had no idea why my friend sent me toward the end of it, Lennon sings Young Girl.
Oh, wow.
So I just went, oh, well, that's kind of cool. So
you can't hide a hit, and so this question, I don't know you this much about it, so I hope it's not a bad question, but you finally had a falling out with Jerry Fuller. Was that a bad thing for you guys, or a good thing?
Yeah, it was. It was a bad thing. I should have done as they said, which is shut up and sing, lad. We know how to make you big and famous and all that kind of stuff. I wanted more control, and that was stupid. That was just plain wrong of me, and so I didn't believe in the song that Jerry wanted to do. It never became a hit. He recorded it with, I think, John Wesley Riles, whose name I remember, but I don't remember him ever having any hits. And so I may have been proven right, but it also kind of took me out of the flow of the success that we had going.
My impression, doesn't mean I'm right, did he kind of want to take you like in a B.J. Thomas kind of road? Is that Is that what he
I don't look at it that way.
Okay.
He was a pop guy, Jerry.
Okay.
He,
All right.
he loved a big band, he loved songs, he loved singers. And that's what it's all about to me.
Okay, so you know, things are going. Okay, tell me about playing for the president and Prince Charles. What's that like?
Pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. They built a big stage on the South Portico. We were on one side on our own stage. We also had the horn section of the Marine band, and they were world class. And on the other side, on another stage, was Burton Cummings and the Guess Who.
Oh wow!
So we kind of traded. We got to go through the line, you know, with all the people. I forget what they call that line, the greeting line, you know, and everybody's in, hello, how are you, nice to meet you, and all that.
Did you get a picture?
You know, I did, but most of my old photos were destroyed. I won't even talk about it, actually. It was just not a good marriage kind of thing. You know, it's all right, you don't have to apologize, but my first wife died of anorexia early on, before she was 40, and we had broken up and were already divorced when all that went on, but she had demons somehow, and I never understood it. Her family, I never understood it, and she destroyed most of. I carried a 35 millimeter with me everywhere I went, you know, and I was constantly just snapping.
And the negatives are gone too.
Yeah, all that stuff.
I think anorexia is one of the worst things because it makes people crazy.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought. Is there a song that you could never sing again because not because you just hate it, just you're sick of it? You know what I mean?
Well, you know, people say, aren't you sick of woman, woman, young girl, lady willpower, over you, this girl is a woman now, whatever, you know, and I go, no. Because when I see the look on the people's faces and I see them singing along and see them smiling and how much they love those songs and those records, it just elicits a brand new response from me of, wow, I see it again, there it is. I have 4 grandchildren, 8 years old and under. 8, 5, Poppy's 2.5. The littlest one is only 6 months old, but the 2 older ones love the music. And they get in the car and they want to have that CD on, and they'll say, Lady Willpower, please, you know, and they sing along and they just love the music. So
listen, 100 years from now, I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you, 100 years from now people are going to listen to that song. It's like It's Now or Never or Love Me Tender. These songs are beautiful.
thank you.
They're beautiful songs. You weren't affected by the British invasion. A lot of bands were. Did you see bands affected by the British invasion because they wanted English guys?
Well, I saw them affected, but I'm not sure why. You know, I mean, the English invasion was spectacular, and it was a lot of fun. I worked with a lot of those guys, and I've been to England, you know, and worked on tours with a number of them.
Tell me who?
Well, it's funny because who I ended up working with were the drummer of Herman's Hermits instead of, and I've worked with Peter Noon a million times, and I will again. You know, he's absolutely great. He's a good guy. He's a good friend.
Well, that's why I want to put you on the spot. But what is the best thing anyone said about your singing or the group? One of those things where it almost made you blush. You know, because some people really can, I'm not saying blow smoke up your rear, but you know, but they meant it. They're like, I think that's a bit, like I just said to you, I think those 4 songs, I think they're absolutely beautiful.
Well,
really,
that's the kind of thing. That's it right there. You know, you just said it again. You know, in some way, and I'm always thankful that people love those songs and those records, and I believe, like you do, that they will survive the test of time. Absolutely. So I don't know. Morrissey, do you know about his recording, Lady Willpower?
I didn't know.
You can look it up and find it. It's on YouTube.
I will.
And we ended up. They went out to L.A., interviewed Jerry Fuller, and they came to Las Vegas where I was working and interviewed me. And it was just an album full of great songs, as Morrissey put it. A great song is a great song. And he had willpower, and he did it very much like we did it, but he did it with keyboard sounds instead of, acoustic sounds, horns, and that kind of stuff. Did a remarkable job of it. He sings it in a different, what's the word I want, attitude, than I do, and we don't sing alike, but he did a great job of the song.
I don't want to keep you forever, but so you, I think, were perfect at the time you were in. Do you think it'd be hard for you to make it today?
You mean being 23 years old again, and that kind of thing? Going back, bring it all forward to now? I honestly don't know. That's a hard question for me because I am one of the old guys and don't pay attention the way that I once did, and when I go and listen to the Beatles channel on Sirius, I'm listening to stuff in a different way than I did the first time I heard it, or through those years when I was hearing it, and I can remember back to '64 or whatever when I'm listening to that particular song, whatever it was the Beatles were doing, I Want to Hold Your Hand, and we're thinking, how can those guys sound so out of tune but so cool? How can they sound so great and so funky, So I don't know if I'd make it or not. Maybe if somebody had the time to put into guiding a voice, to get out there. There's a lot of good voices out there, always, and so I'm just one of the lucky ones to go ahead.
I had a chance to get to know Bob Shane from the Kingston Trio, and he told me once that he was offered Sugar, Sugar,
Really?
The song.
Archie's.
The Archie song. Were there any songs offered to you, like, that you're like, oh, I should have taken it?
Yeah, a couple of the Fifth Dimension songs were offered, and I thought that just doesn't sound like me to me, and yet they went on to be big hits, so I sat a couple times with Mac Davis.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah, I loved what he did on his TV program, just making up a song on the spot kind of thing. But that's true talent. That's an inside view of something that many of us don't understand. But there were a few songs, and I don't remember what they were. I wanted to do "I Who Have Nothing," and the record company said, "No. I wanted to do "I Believe the Children of the Future." Dun, 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 dun.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and of course she took it to the heights,
How did you know you made it in the business?
I knew I made it when I walked into the house, and our daughters, who at the time were 13 and 16, were sitting with their friends listening on an iPod to Gary Puckett and the Union Gap.
That's sweet.
That's when I knew I made it.
I know no one wants to talk about regrets, but if you had a magic wand or a time machine or anything you would do different?
Probably a million things, but
Okay.
yeah. However, I'm pleased with who I am today and where I've come, and so I wouldn't be able to tell you what those, if I could go back and say, all right, I'm going to stick with Jerry Fuller and I'm going to shut up and sing, maybe that's something that I would do differently, because somebody would just say, okay, here's what you do. And I would have just done it, and it would have been better. But, that was just me. And
Did you ever think about doing a disco album? Because it's just beat, beat, beat behind it,
Well, I actually did do one, something like that. Recorded it at Paradise Studios in Munich, Germany. The guys that did Elton John's disco thing, I forget what it was called. But it's a great album. It's really a great album. It's all done with keyboards and a lot of those German kind of sounds and things. Yeah, I'm going to put it out there again, and
I'd love to hear it.
give me an address I can send you. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think one more question before you go. Any other TV shows? Did you ever go on Ready, Steady, Go or The Top of the Pops when you were in England?
Never did those. And I never went to England at that time.
Okay.
That was the weird part. I should have gone to England then, but the management said, no, you'll make a lot more money if you stay home. I think it was he would make a lot more money if we stayed home.
Before you go, anyone that should keep, did like Cary Grant ever walk up to you, you got tongue-tied? Anyone like that?
I did a Make-A-Wish charitable tennis tournament one time, and was asked to do a couple of songs as a part of the donating thing and all that. And I was walking through the restaurant, and Lorne Greene stopped me, shook my hand, and said, "You young man are a great singer." Which is nice, And there were a few others, but Elvis told his maitre d' to tell me, "The boy sure can sing."
He didn't say that very often.
No, I know that.
I did. You don't know me obviously, but the last couple of years I've been talking. 3 years I've been talking to Elvis's friends.
Oh, great.
And he doesn't have that many friends. But if you're his friend forever.
Yeah.
But
I always wished that I could have been friends with Elvis, because between you and me, I feel like I could have helped him away from whatever drug path he took that ultimately killed him.
I think imagine he's coming out with 2 or 3 albums a year. Even when he's making those movies, he had a lot of pressure on him.
Oh, yeah. And I believe that the Colonel kind of fed him the drugs to keep him going.
And imagine the year you had, he had 20 years like that.
Yeah, that's the truth.